When my older sister Alina inherited our grandmother's cottage on the outskirts of town, none of us were too excited. The place was ancient, surrounded by misty forests and half hidden behind a hill no one ever walked past willingly. Local stories called it cursed, but we laughed it off. Still, Alina had just gone through a breakup and needed a break, so she moved in. I decided to visit her a week later, and that's when things started getting weird. The first thing that hit me was the silence. There was no cell service, no birds, no wind, just eerie, heavy quiet. Alina opened the door with a blank face. Not tired, not sad, just hollow. She said she'd been sleeping poorly because of noises in the attic.
Scratching, sometimes whispering,
she said with a forced laugh. I thought it was mice. That night, I'd learned how wrong I was. At 2:37 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the front door opening, but I was the only one awake. Alina was fast asleep in the next room. I grabbed my flashlight and crept out into the hallway. The door was wide open, swinging slightly. Outside, there was nothing, until I heard it. A soft, wet breathing right behind me. When I turned around, there was no one there. But the floorboards beneath my feet were... The next day, I explored the attic. Dust, cobwebs, old trunks. Nothing scary at first. But in one box, I found something disturbing. Dozens of photos of children. None of them were us. Some looked decades old, others more recent. On the back of one photo, someone had written,
"Still watching."
I didn't tell Alina. I just took the box and hid it in my backpack. I didn't know it yet, but they already knew I'd found it. That evening, the air turned thick and cold, even though it was July. Alina started talking to herself. She said things like,
"He's not in the mirror today. Don't open the basement."
I asked her what she meant, but she just laughed and changed the subject. Later that night, while brushing my teeth, I looked up. And in the mirror, someone else was brushing their teeth beside me. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard footsteps coming from the attic above. But these weren't fast or frantic like before. They were slow, steady, and deliberate, like someone pacing. In the morning, I asked Alina if she'd heard anything. She just smiled like I had told a joke and whispered,
"He doesn't like it when we sleep."
I forced a laugh, but deep down, I felt like something inside this house had already begun to shift. I decided I needed to leave. I grabbed my car keys and went outside, only to find all 4 of my tires slashed. There were no footprints around, but someone had written "stay" in the dust on my windshield. I rushed back inside, heart pounding, and demanded an explanation from Alina. She just stood there, staring out the window and murmured, "He does that to everyone who tries to leave." And that's when I realized my sister wasn't afraid. She had already surrendered. Later that afternoon, I went down into the basement, even though Alina told me not to. It was too clean, like someone had gone out of their way to make it seem untouched. On the far wall, I found a door with 3 separate locks. It looked old, but the hinges had been recently oiled. Nearby were dozens of black and white photos taped to the wall. Kids with empty expressions. One of the photos in the corner made me freeze. It was me, taken just yesterday. But I hadn't seen anyone take it. Desperate, I tried using a dusty radio I found in the attic to call for help. To my shock, it worked. A voice crackled through. A man, breathing heavily, asked where I was. I gave him the address. There was a pause, then he said in a low, shaken voice,
"You're too late. He's already inside."
Then the radio went dead. I dropped it, frozen in place until I heard the front door downstairs slam shut. Alina was sitting in the living room, cradling an old faceless doll in her lap. Her eyes were hollow. She kept whispering, "We'll stay here forever." He promised the pain would stop. I shouted at her, shook her shoulders, begged her to snap out of it. Slowly, she turned her head toward me and smiled. Not like my sister, but like a stranger wearing her skin.
"You're one of us now,"
she said quietly. That's when I knew. This house didn't just trap people. It changed them. I locked myself in the guest bedroom. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I tried calling 911 again, but there was no signal. Not even one bar. I turned to the window to open it. but it was sealed shut from the outside. Not nailed or screwed, sealed. The edges of the glass had been fused into the frame like it was melted. When I tried to scream for help, the sound seemed to vanish midair, as if the house itself was swallowing my voice. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the doorknob twitch for hours, slowly turning back and forth, as if someone on the other side was playing with it, waiting for me to lose my mind. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the knob stopped. The room went ice cold. And I heard a voice, not outside the door, but inside the room. You should have left when you had the chance. It didn't sound like a man or woman. It was flat, emotionless, like a recording played backwards. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. In the morning, I found Alina in the kitchen making breakfast like nothing had happened. She acted normal, smiling, asking me if I wanted eggs. I sat across from her, watching every move. She looked like my sister, but something was off. Her smile never reached her eyes. When I asked about the door in the basement, her hand froze midair with the spatula. She said,
You opened it, didn't you?
I didn't answer, but she already knew. She put the spatula down and said,
Then it's too late for both of us.
I went back to the basement, determined to find a way out. The locked door was now wide open. Inside was a small concrete room, bare except for a chair, a cracked mirror, and a journal. The journal had no name, no dates, just short entries.
He feeds on memories. The more you forget, the more real he becomes. If you can't remember who you are, he takes your place.
My hands trembled as I read the last line.
Don't trust the ones who still smile.
Suddenly, I heard the basement door slam shut above me. Darkness swallowed the room. I reached for my phone, but the screen refused to light up. I backed away, tripping over something soft. I turned and saw dozens of dolls scattered across the floor, each with stitched mouths and eyes painted wide open. They looked handmade, but each one wore a tiny name tag. One of them said Alina. Another said Mom. Then I found one that made my blood turn to ice. It said, Me. That's when I realized none of them had ever left this house.